You tell your friend, "I knew it," after the game, after the vote, after the deadline. The certainty feels as solid as a fact. But did you know it before the outcome, or is your brain rewriting your past in real time? There is a simple question that catches the rewrite in the act. Before the result came in, what exactly would you have bet? Most people cannot offer a number because the memory of their actual uncertainty is already gone. And this is no harmless boast. The bias shifts how you estimate risk, how harshly you judge other people's failures, and how much you trust your own judgment in the next decision. The stakes are not pride. The stakes are every future choice you make while wearing a memory that flatters you. Consider a concrete case. You apply for a job and you are certain the interview went well. Later, the rejection arrives. Your memory immediately adjusts. "I knew they were a long shot." That adjustment feels like clear-eyed realism, but it is the exact same mechanism that inflated your confidence beforehand. The problem is that you never allowed yourself to sit in the uncertainty. You did not prepare alternatives, you did not negotiate harder, you did not send a follow-up. The hindsight bias tells you that everything you already did was rational because it was headed for the known outcome. That closes the learning loop. Instead of asking, "What did I miss in my prediction?" you ask, "Why did they not see how good I was?" And the answer reinforces everything. But why would a healthy brain demolish its own memory like that? The mechanism starts deep in the machinery of memory. Your brain does not store events like a video file, waiting to be replayed. Each memory is a reconstruction, built from fragments and cues at the moment of recall. Into that reconstruction, your brain folds everything you have learned since the event. By the time you talk about your prediction, the outcome is one of the fragments. In fact, it is the most obvious cue you have. So the brain treats the thing that happened as something you always knew. Psychologists call this creeping determinism. After an outcome, all the causes line up as if they were on rails, and the feeling of inevitability is written back into the memory of your expectations. That explains the flaw, but it raises a harder question. The clearest demonstration came in the 1970s, in a simple laboratory exercise. The psychologist Baruch Fischhoff asked people to estimate the probability of Richard Nixon visiting China and the Soviet Union. After the trips, people who were given the actual result recalled assigning much higher odds to that result. The event was identical. Only the timing of knowledge shifted. Since then, dozens of studies using elections, medical diagnoses, military conflicts, and stock prices have found the exact same bend in memory. The effect is strongest when the final outcome can be woven into a neat story. The more satisfying the explanation, the more it feels like it was always there waiting to be found. But why would your brain perform such a well-executed rewriting? One reason is that the present is all your brain has to work with. When you recall a prediction, the only solid information available is the knowledge that you have right now. The old uncertainty, the sweaty alternative possibilities, were not encoded into a separate file. They were a state of mind, a diffuse sense of maybe. States of mind have no timestamp, so the brain plugs the current certainty into the old memory because that is the cleanest way to build a narrative. It also serves a social function. "I knew it" is a status signal. It says you are the kind of person who understands how the world works. But the social cost is real and worse than the boast. Could the effect be strong enough to fool even an expert? That is the uncomfortable part. Here is a second line of evidence, and it exposes a deeper layer. In studies where people kept prediction diaries, they wrote down their forecasts before major events and then tried to recall them after. The people who showed the most hindsight bias were not the most ignorant of the situation. They were often the most involved, the most knowledgeable about the topic. Expertise does not protect you. It actually gives your hindsight bias more material to work with. The expert can generate a plausible causal chain from the known outcome more easily than a novice, and that fluency is mistaken for foresight. In other words, the more you understand after the fact, the more your brain insists you understood it before. That is how an honest expert ends up saying, "I told you so," about something they never said. Does this mean every "I knew it" is a lie? No. There are genuine predictions, times when you had a real hunch, a probability estimate, or a well-reasoned forecast. The limit of the hindsight bias is that you often cannot tell the difference between the genuine signal and the retrofitted memory. The brain does not distinguish them at the moment of recollection. Both feel like the same certainty. Researchers have tried to find reliable markers, like how detailed the memory is, how fast it comes, how physically confident it feels. None of them are safe. The only reliable way to know if you predicted something is to have written it down before the outcome. Without that record, the "I knew it" is not a fact. It is a claim your brain makes on shaky evidence. So what does that mean for the choices you make tomorrow? The real cost appears when you combine hindsight bias with decisions. After a project fails, managers look at the outcome and declare it was obvious all along. That leads them to blame the people involved for not seeing it, rather than improving the process. After a diagnosis, a doctor may believe the symptoms pointed straight to the condition, which means the mind stops searching for alternative explanations. After an investment loses money, you tell yourself the signs were there, which means the next bet feels just as safe. In each case, the rewriting of the past filters backward into the future. You decide to take on more risk because confidence tells you, "I saw it coming last time. I can read the signs." But you never could. And the worst part is you will not see it coming. Let us sharpen this with one more layer. Hindsight bias is also a social weapon. After a breakup, friends say, "I never liked them," and offer no memory of ever expressing that before. After a political defeat, commentators declare the result inevitable, erasing their own confident predictions from the weeks before. This is not just annoying. It inflates the difficulty of the forecast. People who constantly perform, "I knew it," come to believe they possess a special foresight, and their groups start to trust them over actual evidence. The second-hand effect on everyone else is that they start to doubt their own memory of uncertainty. If you remember feeling sure when you were not, you are less likely to speak up next time. So how do you catch the bias before it rewrites the record? So what is the simple question? It is this: before you knew the outcome, would you have taken the other side of the bet at even odds? If your honest answer is no, I would not have bet at all because I had no idea, then your "I knew it" is a memory artifact. And that question can be extended into a practice. When a big decision is coming up, whether it is a job move, a big purchase, or a vote, write down your prediction in a sentence and attach a probability to it. Put it somewhere you will not look until later. After the result arrives, read it. The gap between what you wrote and what you remember feeling is the exact magnitude of your bias. Most people never take this step. Their memory simply absorbs every outcome into a story of competence. There is a second fix that works even in the moment, when you cannot write anything down. Call it the "why would I be wrong" test. Before you commit to a prediction, name the most specific reason the opposite outcome could happen. That forces your brain to hold two futures at once, which weakens the inevitable narrative that hindsight will later build. Watch how this plays out in a normal conversation. A friend asks whether their risky proposal will succeed. If you answer just yes, you have planted no anchor. If you answer yes and the reason it might not is X, you now have a second point of reference. When the future arrives, X will either be true or false, and that fact will stand apart from your vague memory of having approved. The test may not change your current confidence, but it plants a marker. When the outcome arrives, that marker makes it harder for your mind to pretend it was obvious, because you have created a tiny memory that resists deletion. Still, there is a reason this bias exists, and it is not pure ego. In an uncertain world, a brain that maintains a large archive of failed predictions would spend too much energy carrying doubt. Folding the outcome into your store of knowledge gives you a clean narrative, which is useful for fast decisions in the future. The problem is not that you rewrite the past. The problem is that you never audit the rewrite. The few people who do, writers, poker players, whether forecasters, hedge fund managers, tend to keep records. When a professional forecaster checks their old probability estimates and sees how often they were wrong, the shock is almost universal. Their confidence was higher than their accuracy, and the record, not the memory, reveals it. So here is the real price of hindsight bias, and it is steeper than it looks. Every time you claim you knew it all along, you isolate yourself from the signal of your own error. Overconfidence increases risk-taking in every domain, from gambling to investing to trusting a medical symptom. It weakens your ability to learn, because learning requires an admission that your prediction was wrong. Without that admission, the brain logs the event as a success, and you keep repeating the same forecasting style. Meanwhile, the people around you hear, "I knew it," and stop giving you their honest doubts. A person with perfect hindsight has no reason to change, and a person with no reason to change never improves. The error compounds silently, because each false success story becomes evidence for the next risky move. The one solid habit is to treat your own memory of confidence as suspect. When the phrase, "I knew it," rises in your throat, replace it with something weaker and more honest. "I see now why that happened." That is a claim about the present, about understanding, not about the past. It lets you keep the lesson without the lie. You feel a bit less important in that moment, but you become a much better forecaster, because the truth is you are not the person who saw it coming. You are the person who is only now seeing it, and that person can still learn. This is not self-criticism for its own sake. It is calibration. The difference between "I knew it" and "I see it now" is the difference between a closed door and an open one. One ends the conversation, the other starts an inquiry. And the final thought: the prediction of future events is based on probabilities, but you can never hold those probabilities in your hand after the fact. The only way to know what you actually believed is to leave a record before the outcome appears. The next time you are absolutely sure you knew the result, stop and ask yourself, would the past version of you have laid $1 on that? The answer will rarely be a confident yes. But the question, honestly asked, is the one thing that can save your next decision from the memory of a certainty that never was. It will not make you clairvoyant. It will make you better where your memory is weakest. At the moment the outcome arrives, when certainty feels like a gift and is actually a trick.